Our next speaker is Eric Granholm. Eric is a professor of psychiatry, also at UCSD, and the director of the Schizophrenia Psychosocial Rehabilitation Program at the VA San Diego Healthcare System. He received his PhD in clinical psychology in 1991 at UCLA and completed a postdoctoral fellowship at UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute, where he conducted research on social skills training and family therapy for schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. He has an active research program conducting trials of psychosocial interventions for schizophrenia and is currently principal investigator on 2 federally funded research grants to study CBT for psychosis. I think you'll find Eric's talk very interesting because Eric is one of those rare people who is really blending work in terms of social skills and cognitive behavior therapy or cognitive restructuring, another very powerful cognitive behavioral approach into a single program with the goal of helping people to achieve personal functional goals. So please welcome Eric.
Thanks, Kim. I need to see my slides or else I can't talk either, even though I have them here. Thanks also to the conference organizers for inviting me to come and talk about CBSST. I'm just going to dive right in because I always have way too many slides to get through. But I always like to throw this up first, which is that CBT, or Social Skills Training, or CBSST, is an adjunctive treatment to pharmacologic interventions for people who have schizophrenia. If you know the CBT literature, there are trials where people with major depressive disorder are in trials for CBT versus medications, or to see if CBT plus medications works better for depression and things like that. But the research in schizophrenia doesn't pit a psychotherapy against a medication. These are therapies that are adjunctive interventions to pharmacologic interventions. So I like to put that caveat up there. Kim and Tom have talked a lot about what social skills training is, and I'm not going to talk, I might not talk at all about that actually. I'm going to focus more on the cognitive behavioral aspect of the version of social skills training that we've developed, John McQuaid and I at UCSD. I grew up in Bob Liverman's shop up at UCLA, learned a lot about social skills training, and worked with Mike Goldstein on behavioral family management, very behavioral perspective. And I noticed while doing these social skills training groups that Kim mentioned that, you have 8 people there and they can all role play with you how to ask a girl out in a coffee shop on a date, but they would go out to the coffee shop and come back from their homework and say that none of them did it. So, it's not surprising that just because you can ask your therapist out on a date doesn't mean that in the real world you ask someone out on a date. And what's in the way? Often what's in the way is a thought. The thought that she might not say yes, okay? Or the self-efficacy kind of beliefs, or the outcome expectancy kind of beliefs that Tom was mentioning. It's not rocket science. People have thoughts, and sometimes it stops them from executing very skilled behavior. I can make eye contact, I can say something assertively, but do I execute that in the community? Often these expectancies or other thoughts, or sometimes beliefs about psychotic experiences, might be in the way. A host of things might be in the way. So this is basically one rationale for why to look at people's thoughts while doing social skills training. So we're training these behaviors, but the key is to get past what Tom talked about, the capacity. You get an 80 on the UPSA, but you don't live independently. Well, a lot of barriers can be in the way of that. But you can have great skills, but why don't you execute them? For one thing, people who have schizophrenia have a lot of failure experiences caused by the illness itself, social stigma, cognitive impairments can make people not do well in school or socially, have a lot of failure experiences. Well, if you don't do well all the time, you develop defeatist performance beliefs. The idea that I'm damaged by illness, I'll just fail again, it's not worth the effort, why bother, it's not going to work out. If that's what you think, you're not going to do it. So there's an opportunity for intervention. That's what leads people to do badly at work or school and leisure. So if we challenge these defeatist beliefs, we might get people to execute their good skills. Again, this is a combined treatment. The biological psychiatry model, which is the predominant model in our department, is that people have symptoms, and the best way and that those symptoms interfere with feeling good and doing well in your life. So you have voices, they tell you not to go out, so you don't go out and you're distressed. So the symptom leads to the consequences. The treatment, wonderful, get people on medications, eradicate the voices, you'll improve people's level of distress and their functioning. The CBT model, or the cognitive behavioral model, is that voices are just a situation or an experience like any other, and just because you hear a voice is not what necessarily leads you to the distress or the dysfunction, but it's what you think about the voice. If you think the voice is the devil and that he can harm you, that's going to be a distressing thought that's going to make you stay in. But if you think the voice is due to illness and that it has no control or power over you, it's not due to an external entity that has superpowers that could harm you, that's less distressing, less fearful, you're going to get on the bus. So that's the treatment target for CBT. Okay, we can treat the voices. There is a pointer on here. Okay, so we go after the B. So Kim also mentioned the stress diathesis coping model. This idea that your biological vulnerabilities interact with stress to lead you to symptoms or relapse or problems due to illness. Well, the idea here is that this is a slippery slope. If you have a voice and you think it's the devil and it's distressing, that's stress. And that makes your symptoms worse. It reinforces beliefs. And so the goal of CBT, or the goal of targeting thoughts as another tool to put into your belt to help you work with patients, is you can reduce symptoms and distress by changing those harmful thoughts about beliefs and symptoms. Less distress, less symptoms within this theoretical model. So I've just told you 3 rationales for intervening with thoughts. Go after defeatist performance beliefs, and the idea that beliefs are stressful and that's what leads to the dysfunction and the worsening of symptoms. That's all I'm going to say about rationale, but that's basically the theoretical background for going after both behaviors and cognitions. I'll briefly now tell you about some research on CBT in particular, which has mostly been studied in the UK and mostly interventions targeting positive symptoms of schizophrenia. But I'm going to run through this because what I want to do is give you a feel for how CBT is done in a very practical way for the majority of this presentation. And what I want to sell you on, in case you fall asleep, I'm the last speaker on a long day, is that CBT is easy. I think people can do CBT as self-help. I don't think it's not rocket science. If you do cognitive interventions as a skill, I think it's easy skill to put in your tool belt and just gives you some other way that you can help people in your caseload.